Good evening, it's Saturday, the 5th of April. You're tuned in to our 10 p.m. newscast coming to you from Arirang's news centre in Seoul. Our top story this evening, Japan has ordered its military in the East Sea to strike any ballistic missiles that may be launched by North Korea in the coming weeks. Tokyo has grown increasingly nervous after Pyongyang fired 2 Rodong-class mid-range ballistic missiles over the sea last week. A government source told Reuters on Saturday that Japanese Defense Minister Itsunori Onodera issued the order on Thursday to shoot down any missiles that North Korea launches between now and April 25th. The source says the minister did not make it public in order to avoid putting a chill on renewed talks between Tokyo and Pyongyang. The government-level talks between North Korea and Japan are the first in almost a year and a half. Japan's move to make fresh territorial claims to the Korea-controlled Dokdo Island in school textbooks this week didn't come as a big surprise to anyone. But Japanese media outlets are reporting the publishers may have taken the initiative themselves to stay in the Abe administration's good books. And claims to Dokdo weren't the only changes made to the textbooks, as our Yulian reports.
It seems Japanese publishers were very conscious of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's strong nationalistic stance when they decided to include Japan's false territorial claims to the Korea-controlled Dokdo Island in elementary school textbooks set to be published next year. Japanese media outlets reported Saturday that publishing houses, preempting a revision to the law that comes into force in 2016, that textbooks will have to reflect the government's opinions in regard to territorial issues, decided to make the revisions early. The companies are said to be concerned their textbooks might not be selected by the Education Ministry if they veer too far from the current administration's agenda. Abe has been hardening Tokyo's territorial claims to Dokdo Island ever since he came to power last year, and diplomatic relations with Seoul have eroded as a result. One of the publishing firms even went as far as to replace the fact the two countries co-hosted the 2002 World Cup finals with wild claims the Japanese invasion of Korea in the early 1900s was a, quote, military expedition, and also that Korea is illegally occupying Dokdo Island.
We need to teach students that Dokdo and Senkaku are Japanese territory. It needs to be taught that way, and they need to be understood as our territory.
This latest move comes despite pressure from the United States for Japan to improve its strained ties with Korea. It was Washington's insistence that saw the leaders of the three countries come together late last month on the sidelines of an international nuclear security summit in the Netherlands. Yulian, Arirang News.
South Korean Coast Guard officers have spent the day searching for a cargo ship carrying 16 North Korean crew, and it sank off the southern coast in the early hours of Friday morning. The bodies of 2 North Korean sailors have been recovered, but 11 are still missing and presumed dead. The Coast Guard, backed by helicopters and civilian cargo ships, had to battle against strong winds and high waves during their search today. The 3 crew members that were rescued have been receiving hospital treatment on the southern resort island of Jeju. The Mongolian flag freighter, with a cargo of iron ore and copper powder, was sailing from North Korea to China when it sank some 60 kilometers southeast of the southern port city of Yosu. The South Korean government says discussions are underway on repatriating the survivors. Now, Korea is celebrating Arbor Day on this Saturday, and to mark the annual holiday, numerous tree planting events have been taking place around the country. President Park Geun-hye joined in as well, planting a commemorative tree in the garden of the presidential office of Cheongwa-dae. Speaking to staff at the event, President Park stressed the importance of planting trees, adding that the Korean people have made painstaking efforts to restock the nation's forests in the 6 decades that have passed since the end of the Korean War. The president of the World Bank says he expects battles over food and water to erupt within the next 5 to 10 years unless the world comes up with a plan to address climate change and its impacts. In an interview with British daily The Guardian, Jim Young Kim called on people who did not believe in global warming to learn the lessons of how protesters and scientists joined forces in the battle against HIV. Kim said there were 4 areas where the World Bank can help specifically in the fight against global warming. They include things like finding a stable price for carbon, removing fuel subsidies, and investing in cleaner cities. He also stressed that the World Bank has almost doubled its lending capacity to $28 billion a year, with the aim of eradicating extreme poverty by 2030. Now, in other international news, Afghanistan is undergoing its first ever democratic transfer of power as voters flock to polling stations to choose their next president. Incumbent President Hamid Karzai also took to the ballot box on Saturday as he's barred from running again after 12 years in power. Voting has proceeded peacefully in Kabul thus far under the watchful eye of thousands of police and soldiers. The Taliban had issued threats of bombings and assassinations, calling the vote a US-backed sham. The final result could be announced as late as October if no candidate gets more than 50% of the vote. A team of researchers here in Korea may have found the key to understanding glacial, interglacial cycles, or in layman's terms, why the Earth goes through ice ages. They've found clues that might explain the phenomenon of stalagmites in Korea's northern Gangwon-do province. Son Jung-in reports.
Local researchers have analyzed the growing process of stalagmites found in Baekneong Cave, located in Pyeongchang, Gangwon-do province. These rock formations, which are formed by materials deposited on the floor from ceiling drippings, reveal that growth surged in interglacial periods when temperatures were warmer than during glacials or cold periods. This finding closely relates to the Intertropical Convergence Zone, an area near the equator where trade winds converge and drastically affect rainfall. The Intertropical Convergence Zone that hovers over the southern hemisphere moves up north when the glacial period ends, reaching the subtropical region in the northern hemisphere, resulting in better growth of stalagmites there due to increased rainfall. However, when the ITCZ moves south, precipitation concentrates in the southern hemisphere. The interhemispheric migration of this water cycle was known to be limited to just some tropical and subtropical regions. But local researchers have discovered that the impact of this system reached temperate regions as well, based on a new 550,000-year record of the growth frequency of stalagmites in South Korea.
The research showed a contrasting result from the stalagmites made in caves in the southern hemisphere. This result could help us explain more in detail the change in the glacial and interglacial period in the past.
The researchers said the study can prove that an interglacial period starts when mass precipitation in the Intertropical Convergence Zone that moves northward melts glacials in the northern hemisphere, marking the end of a glacial period. The research was featured in the scientific journal Nature. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Now, this month, April, is Science Month here in Korea. To highlight this, a series of events will be held across the country, offering children and adults the chance to enjoy all aspects of science firsthand. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
In just 3 minutes, this man tells a story of the life and death of a brown frog. This is a Film Lab competition, a contest that supports and encourages those in the science, math, and engineering fields to communicate their work to the public. First created in Britain in 2005, the event is now held in over 20 countries worldwide as it seeks to find fresh, new voices to spread scientific knowledge. The first Film Lab competition in Seoul will take place on April 18th.
We decided to hold the competition to show how closely related science is with our daily lives and to promote creativity through science.
Along with this contest, there are some 600 science events scheduled to take place this month. A science magic show will be held at the National Science Museum in the central city of Daejeon, and at the Gwacheon National Science Museum in Gyeonggi-do Province, participants will get the chance to make solar observations. As for other regions, a science exhibition just for teens will be held in the southern port city of Busan, while a science cultural fair will be hosted in the western port city of Incheon. During the last week of April, enthusiasts, both young and old, will even get the chance to build electric cars and LED lights at a festival in Seoul. In line with all these science-themed events, a music festival will also be thrown, with ticket profits to go towards the funding of science camps for disadvantaged youth. Organizers expect these events will appeal to people of all ages and give the public a reason to get excited about science. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now in sports, Korean golfer Park Se-ri is tied at the top of the leaderboard in the first LPGA Major of the year. In the second round of the Kraft Nabisco Championship in Rancho Mirage, California, Park went round in 70 to match 19-year-old American Lexi Thompson at 7 under. Korean-American Michelle Wie is a stroke back on 6 under. World number 1 and defending champion Park In-bi is 7 shots behind the leaders at level par. 36-year-old Park Se-ri won the last of her 5 major titles in 2006 and has 25 LPGA Tour victories. Now, before we go, let's take a brief look at the weather for the rest of the weekend. Most of the country is under partly cloudy skies this evening, and it is a chilly night, with the overnight low expected to dip down to a very frosty 1 degree Celsius here in Seoul. Sunday will be a crisp but sunny spring day with a daytime high peaking at around 13 or 14 degrees Celsius in the Korean capital. The mercury will pick up a bit from Monday. Let's take a look at the weather conditions wherever you are around the world. And those are the stories we have for you at this hour. For more of the latest stories, don't forget to check out our website, arirang.co.kr/news.